the entire developmental stages of this law, from the point when it was an idea to the point of publication, was supported by CSUDP, UNDP, and Pamoja Trust. So it was that integration of social actors, civil society, and the political society. Because I think sometimes to achieve these big dreams, we need to connect, to find meeting ground. We need to mainstream our politics in this country, to have a clear focus on what we want to achieve as a people. And that's why I came up with this bill, partly to depoliticize policy and to infuse in our agenda economic and social development. That is the object of devolution. You cannot be a defender of devolution without knowing what Article 174 says. How many of you know what are the provisions of Article 174? I will read them. Objects of devolution. Article 174 is key. But they are almost A to almost what? To I. The first one is to promote democratic and accountable exercise of power. But the one which I find very relevant is F. To promote social and economic development and the provision of proximate, easily accessible services throughout Kenya. Social and economic development, ECOSOC. They were told that their object is ECOSOC. That's why most governors have gotten the narrative of development wrong. ECOSOC for me is Article 43. So in other words, the governors discharge responsibilities carried out in Article 43. I believe governments must not be in business. Our narrative of development is almost at national government level. We've not been able to deconstruct what the narrative of development for the counties must be. Part of the reason is the people who are supposed to, in quotes, oppose have not shown an alternative, consistent alternative narrative or vision for the country. And therefore, people will be carried by the euphoria of the day. And finally, why did I decide? Unfortunately, in Kenya, when it is not in law, people think it is not binding. Everybody asked me the why question. Why? We have now doubled our domestic debt from 1 trillion to 2 trillion. And all this investment is nothing on social justice. It's not making us any better off. We are taking loans from the Chinese Exim Bank at 7 to 8% interest. That is almost commercial. When the maturity period arrives for the repayment, you will see how any government will be faced by myriads of problems they cannot imagine. And yet, we have to realize we have a population right now that is a lot less critical in terms of its thinking. So this bill simply tries to change the architecture of our planning and our public finance, because that's where ECOSOC is provided for. So it is so basic. So I would urge all of you to read it. What does it do? It creates a mandatory obligation on the county governments to create something called the County Strategic Plan for Realization of Economic and Social Rights, which that county strategic plan becomes part of the CIDP. So immediately this bill comes to law, all counties must review their CIDPs to integrate so that they show progressively, year by year, what investment they are making in these areas that they are their mandate areas. Secondly, it creates a nexus between county governments and national governments. National government to partner on matters of socio-economic rights, because most of the times the money is still at the national level. So what we are doing is we are changing the architecture of our public finance and the architecture of our planning, so that in the budget policy statement you must reflect, in the CIDP you must reflect what you are doing for economic and social rights. Then there is an oversight agency. We've put this mandate of oversight to the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. And then the recommendations of these two assemblies, or these two chambers, are binding on the next planning cycle or finance cycle of county assemblies. So for me, there must be a formula that envisages what I call asymmetry. A quota outside the equalization fund of asymmetry. So you must have a deeper criteria. Your advocacy right now must be almost like a marketing strategy, so that young people start to understand that ultimately after the selfie, you are by yourself. that ultimately you have to get a little deeper and a little more critical.
Inequality is a social justice issue. Inequity is a social justice issue. And human indignity is a social justice issue. In complex societal problems, you have dilemmas, but what you have is problems that are complex, that are very wicked in nature. By wicked, I mean not evil. That means that you cannot solve the problem fully. You may have a temporary solution. You do something over here and it upsets something over there. That is the complexity of wicked problems. They're not tame problems. They're ill-defined problems. And they're very complex to solve. And the solutions to them are that only when you have a democratic system, open, where different stakeholders in a pluralistic system are clear about their perspective, have positions and worldviews that can be contested so the problem can be structured. There are at least 3 levels of intervention. And I'll call them top, middle, and bottom. The top level involves institutions. And here we can talk of the institutions of the state and the offices of those institutions. The middle level is of many, many types of associations and organizations. Then that is where the people's organizations, CSOs, other formations of many sorts fall in. That's the middle level. So what is the bottom level? And that's the bottom level is where your constituencies are. In this case, that's the level of the people. That's where the agency is.
One of the most outstanding issues in these 2 cases is one, there is that additional value. By establishment of those structures means you add value to the governance and decision making at that level. From both sides, from the citizen side and from the government side. 2, accountability is key. The recording of all the events and documenting them acts as an evaluation, as a monitoring and tool that no one will run away from it. 3, institutionalization of budget process is important for ensuring that all the priorities that the citizen wants will be included. Otherwise, if it's a past, it will overshadow the entire process, and probably the target group will only think of money. Finally, is the knowledge management. After all the discussions, we ask ourselves, where do we get this information? Are all these steps documented? And anyone from anywhere across Kenya be able to access and see what did Kakamega did or Malindi did? And we felt like, as part of sharing experiences, so that it can inform our process, there is need to have a platform for sharing best practices in urban space. That will really bring in and share, and we will be able to replicate some of the best practices.
We further observed that civic engagement strategies and practice have not been sufficiently inclusive and continue to deny the majority of the urban residents right to realize their urban development aspirations and dignify their status. We've discussed dignity, we've discussed denial to access of certain service accesses, we've discussed a lot of things about the residents' participation in this space, and that to me is a critical observation, and it's something we want to carry in as a position that we have in this particular conference. While we do that, we take cognizance of the fact that devolution carries the biggest promise ever for reversing urban inequalities. We need to then start to think, how do we get ourselves from all the expertise we have, the experience we have,
the intentions we've had, the actions we've had, the practice we have, the lessons and experiences start to influence these legislative processes in a collective and harmonized manner. So we shall deploy the CSO's competence to organize communities. That's what we have. We do that every day. But especially the poor and the women, to effectively assemble and build consensus on their development priorities, including, I think, urban economy is a very important thing, taxation policies, in order to facilitate efficient negotiation in the formulation of the urban integrated development plans. We need to start thinking, how do we avail this information that is in our custody so that it can start to inform other perspectives of planning and so on? And thirdly, we shall take all necessary steps to market and promote states' absorption of innovations on basic service provisions, particularly for the urban poor, so we can continue to realize dignity. Fourthly, we shall harmonize CSO positions and approaches in service provision through strategic collaborations, network sharing, information, and capacity building. We shall work with the relevant agencies to progressively motivate local action that positively impacts on the global urban agenda. Showcase, but as well learn from those who are better than you. We shall work towards building a coalition of urban actors with a shared interest that promotes the collective aspiration of the social movements. So we are calling for action. We are calling upon national government, county governments, development partners, private sector, civil society organizations, and organized citizens groups to cooperate and partner in setting a conducive environment that facilitates the realization of these conference resolutions. We want to see what work we can do in the coming year and come back here probably after another 12 months or so and have another reflection and say, so guys, where are we? What is it that's happening new? Do we have more Kashero type stories? Do we have more Nachu type stories? Do we have more Umande type stories? Do we have more marginal Fanisi type stories? And how are they changing lives? How are we able to go back and carry this to our governors and convince them further that this actually works?